Sweet. It looks like it's live. Awesome. So thank you for being on. It's been a little bit since we kind of saw each other last. Would you be able to just kind of give an introduction to who you are and what you're kind of involved in right now?
Sure. My name is Kristin Broumas, and I am co-owner and operator of Community Skis, which is a custom-based ski manufacturer. But we're not like most ski manufacturers in the sense that we are on a trailer platform, so we're completely mobile.
Awesome. That was an incredibly succinct answer to that question that I feel like I haven't gotten in the past. So you started as something different, right? It started as 222?
333.
333.
Yep. So we started out in 2009. We started out as 333 Skis. So a little background, real quick. So my business partner, Michael Lish, he started out building snowboards in Southern California back about 30 years ago, maybe 40 at this point, and that turned into him making custom skis in about 2009. And he had this idea where he would build skis in this trailer that he built himself and go up to Mammoth Lakes, California, where the ski area is, and make skis and ski, etc., and get exposure for the company. So he needed someone. He got so many orders coming in when this company first launched, and he needed someone to help him. So I decided to come out and work with him more remotely, but I ended up staying. And then we worked within that company for about 4 years out of that trailer. And it was a pretty, rustic looking trailer. It was interesting by all means, but it was interesting. And then from there, we actually moved into a shop space, and now we're in the trailer that we're in.
Awesome. So then how did you end up kind of getting hooked up with Michael, and like what kind of went down in your life before that led to you deciding to make that choice?
Yeah, so I was living in Golden, Colorado right before I came out to California. And I grew up back east in Maine and got a Bachelor of Science in Interior Design. My background's cooking, spent many, many years working in different restaurants cooking. And all of those things led me to Golden, Colorado, because I was really interested in green architecture, green design, etc. And I was looking for any sort of firm that did even remotely some of that aspect, so I could kind of go under their wing and learn what I could. So I found a firm in Boulder, and I worked with them for 2 years. And after 2 years, my boyfriend at the time told me about this guy building skis in a trailer, and I should check it out. Not in regards to a job, but just in regards to this is a really neat concept. And so I looked into it. My dad was turning 60 that year, so I said, I want to get my dad a set of skis. So through the process of designing those skis with Michael, and then also in addition to that, he was looking for a business manager at the time. That's how him and I kind of got hooked up, because we just kind of hit it off. We had similar values, similar ideas. And he said, why don't you come out and at least, we can meet each other. He was out in California. So I drove out and decided to spend about a month with him, just learning about ski building, talking about the business, just kind of getting systems set up. And after a month, it was like 2 months, and then 3 months. And then my boyfriend's calling and say, are you going to come back? And I just decided that I really liked it out there, and I wanted to stay with the company. I also thought that not just because I wanted to be there, I really needed my presence to be there as opposed to working remotely.
That's cool. And then so how was it kind of learning that ski process? Because was that your first real exposure to building skis at all?
Oh, totally. I remember when I was like first ordering the skis for my dad, my boyfriend Brian, I'm like, what's turn radius? Because he's a diehard skier, so he knew all this stuff, but I'm like, oh my God. And then when I first started out, Mike was like, I want you to be the one designing the skis. I want you to train you to do it. I'm like, I don't know anything about skis. I mean, I knew how to downhill ski, but I didn't know anything beyond that. And it was just lots and lots of practice and lots of feedback from clients, and I learned a lot about ski design. Absolutely.
And you do the graphic design as well too. How did you kind of get into that side of things? Because it seems like you ended up doing like this just incredible plethora of everything as it relates to that business, like from helping out with the manufacturing to like cooking to design to all of this stuff. Like, how did you end up, like what things did you come in with, and then what things did you end up kind of picking up along the way?
Well, what I picked up definitely along the way is business and a sense of business, how business works, and just the complexity of business, and then learning about the depth and breadth of business. So not to say I'm an expert by any means at this point. I think it's obviously something you can never really master, but I've learned a tremendous amount. And then also obviously about ski building, which is really about composites, understanding different materials that come together to then serve a purpose. In our case, we have different things we want those skis to do. We want them to flex. We want them to be, durable. We want them to be able to do things in both warm and sub-zero or sub-freezing temperatures. So there's a lot more factors that have to go into that composite. And then you have variables like different people's ski ability, different weights, different force being applied to those skis, whether they're just cruising down a groomer or they're jumping off 30-foot cliffs in the backcountry. There's all those things that go into, and then understanding how that composite needs to be built based upon all those factors. So I definitely learned a lot in regards to that. Things that I brought to the table, I had I had a pretty good cooking knowledge prior to, and going to school for interior design was really helpful in terms of, I've always been really interested in environments and the effect environments have on people, both in the way that they work, the way that they feel in that environment, the conversations that they have based upon being in that environment, and just how much that environment has influence on their day-to-day, which obviously in the long run has a big picture in their overview, their life. So taking that information into, this environment that we live in and work in now, first the first trailer and then the community ski shop. We actually had a brick and mortar, and now our current trailer. And not just inside those trailers and environments, but also the places we park them. How are they parked? How is the sun coming in? What are you looking at when you look out the kitchen window? What are you looking at when you look out the build deck window? That sort of thing. Taking all those into account. So I kind of feel like a lot of what I do now kind of is able to pull everything I did before. It was like I was just setting myself up for this without even knowing. But then there's also the factor that community skis is kind of set up to encourage growth and learning in a lot of ways. So, because it's at that sort of platform, I was able to then cultivate all those things from my past and push them forward as I wanted to. And with cooking, it's been amazing. I mean, to the point where I'm planning my next trailer right now, which is a 40-foot trailer, and it's going to be a mobile restaurant, and that's going to be the next step.
Yeah, and I'm really excited for that too. That was one of the things that I really appreciated when we were out in the desert when you cooked us those meals. It was pretty awesome just to be out there and kind of have that experience with like-minded people. And I think that's going to be really cool to see that evolve in your own project and see how other people kind of react to that. How did you see things change with, obviously you talked about the environments that people were in. How did you see things change as you went from the first iteration of the trailer back to more of a brick and mortar space, and then back to another trailer, and then how people interacted with those different things? And did you kind of change your direction as far as how you were trying to target people or bring them into that space, or how did that whole kind of process work?
Yeah, so definitely, from the first trailer to the second trailer, obviously by the time we built the second trailer, we really understood the process of ski building in terms of efficiency in our platform. So we were able to design the trailer around it, as opposed to the first trailer, we were designing the platform to fit into that trailer. So that was huge. And then also just the aesthetics, the impression, we really love curiosity, and we always want to make sure we're opening ourselves to be very welcome and encourage people to come and say hello, see things, ask questions. And the first trailer didn't have many windows, and it just looked a little bit more grim, kind of like, well, what is this? So there was a curiosity aspect, but it wasn't like I want to run up and go say hello kind of aspect, where this new trailer is tons of glass. The aesthetic is just, it's more warmy. It's got a lot of wood. It's a composite of different materials. So and we've noticed this as we've traveled just everywhere we go, people of all sorts, from kids to and everything, older adults, everybody in between, they have a curiosity. I mean, we have cowboys come up and say, what are you doing in here? I mean, there's no barrier there, which is really cool. In regards to the shop, that was different because that was a face-to-face, as opposed to, and I'm talking about ski sales, when we have our trailers, we're pretty much all online. Very, very rare would anyone ever come up to the trailer and actually buy a set of skis, unless we're in a place for a while. But when we're out on the road, that's not very common. So basically, that's all about how do you build a relationship with someone without actually ever meeting them in person. Where the shop in Mammoth was that face-to-face, let's have a conversation and then build this relationship based upon that face-to-face experience. And then the shop in Mammoth obviously was much bigger, so we were able to connect to the community much more so because we were able to open it up to the community, doing different fundraising. We did a ton of events because living in a small ski town like Mammoth Lakes, you know, one of the drawbacks is that you don't have the access to culture like you do in bigger cities. So we tried to bring that culture to the town by, I mean, LA is like 5-6 hours down the road. So there's a ton of culture, a ton of professionals, a ton of amazing people that know a lot of stuff, that love to ski, that come to Mammoth. So we were able to, you know, pick a few from that, and they came and they did different lectures at our shop, ranging anything from, you know, somebody who did the score for the March of the Penguins to somebody coming and talking about DARPA and Black Matter. And
That's awesome. It was also really cool to see kind of that whole process and how you guys ended up utilizing kind of the least amount of materials in creating a ski. And then I think what kind of interested me the most was the drying process and how you guys encapsulated it in a bag and then used the sun to do that. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because I didn't fully understand that whole thing, but I thought it was really cool when I had first kind of seen the whole process go down.
Yeah, sure. So basically, when you're building a composite, you're trying to bond multiple materials together. So in a real basic sense, we're taking basically PTEX, which is polyethylene, that's the base of the ski, metal edge, fiberglass, or sometimes carbon fiber, and a wood core. In our case, we use a 9-ply Baltic birch. And we're gonna bond all those things together in different layering. Usually the fiberglass and carbon are gonna be both below and above the core. So once we have all of that built out, which means that those things are cut to the size specifications, the core is milled to the right flex, et cetera, we go on to what's called build deck, or the wet lay glassing process. And so I'll take all those materials and lay them from the bottom to the top, wetting out each layer with epoxy resin in between. Once all that stuff's been built up, it's ready to go into what we call the press. That's what's traditionally used in ski manufacturing. We use a vacuum press, which is great because it conforms to any shape, size, length of ski, as opposed to a traditional press, which is different molds. So you're kind of stuck to what molds or build new molds. So this composite goes into this, basically it's a plastic bag in a really simple form. It goes into that, and then you heat seal either end so it becomes an airtight chamber. You attach your vacuum, and then the atmospheric pressure actually pulls that air and bonds everything together really tightly and keeps it under that pressure. The pressure will vary depending on what the weather is and what elevation we're at, but typically it's about 21 Hg or so. And it stays under that pressure until that resin cures. Now, the resin will cure on its own at room temperature. It'll probably take about 24 hours. Now, if you heat it, it'll expedite the time it takes to cure. So there's two ways to heat it. Traditionally, when we're just in like a production mode, we have a hot box. So we have a propane heater and we get it up to a max of 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And so that goes in there and stays probably about 40 to 50 minutes. And then it comes out, it's done. And then you release the vacuum. You've got the ski that needs to be trimmed, but it's basically your ski. Now, in regards to sunlight, if we wanted to, and we have done this in the past, we haven't done this with the new trailer, but we used to do it with the old trailer a lot, where you can just keep that ski on the vacuum and you can put it up on the roof or put it outside. As long as it's attached to that vacuum, it's going to be perfectly fine. And depending on the temperature, and when you're in the desert and you've got direct sunlight, obviously that gets pretty warm. So you can put it in that environment, and then that will be the heat source for those skis to cure.
Dang. You had that process dialed. I got a little off topic there too. So I'm going to try and bring it back a little bit. What kinds of things did you end up running into as far as challenges, either in the process of building the skis, like you just mentioned, or with the mobile unit that you're taking to create the skis, or kind of just the business as a whole? I'm assuming that with a lot of the transformation that Community Skis has gone through over the years, that there's been quite a bit of hurdles that you guys have had to try to go through. Could you talk a little bit about that? Yeah,
there's been a lot. And I mean, to handpick which ones, I don't know. But I mean, just from the sense of the ski, we had to, because we're not following the traditional industry of how to build skis. And there's a good reason for that. Not because we want to be different, but because we saw that ski manufacturing was going overseas, primarily to China. And we thought, how can we build skis really efficiently so it's cost efficient, time efficient, so that we don't have to ship it to China to get cheap labor. We can build them here in the United States, and whoever's building them can make a decent wage. So that's why we designed the platform the way we did. And so that was one of the biggest hurdles. How do you design an efficient manufacturing platform? It was kind of a problem to be solved over a period of time. And that leads me to another problem we encountered, which was just kind of, not to go too much into it, but I feel like I should bring it up, is, we had a huge issue in terms of online when we first started regarding the online community, the online ski community. So there's a thing called the Teton Gravity Research Forum. And basically, when Michael first launched the company, he had what was called the 222 and a 333. And the 222 and the 333 to an extent, they were all test series skis. So basically, he wanted them to order these skis. They were $222 or $332, very inexpensive, especially for custom skis. And he did that so inexpensive because he wanted the feedback. He was trying to learn how to build skis. He was trying to learn how to design skis. So he wanted to offer this amazing value in exchange for performance feedback. Now, I think what happened was people didn't really understand that. Maybe we didn't communicate that correctly. And so it got like blown out, like where people were stuck on, the skis broke when I did this, or the skis don't look very good. And it was like, well, that's kind of the point. We want you to make the skis. We want to know what the failures are so we can fix it. And if they didn't just perform right, awesome. That means, now we know in regards to you and that ski, now we learn that much more. And in terms of aesthetic, that was never part of it at that point. We figured we'd figure out aesthetic later on, although we did realize how much aesthetic means even in a test platform. And, because we sent that protocol out to everybody, typically test skiers are within companies, or they're, athletes, or they're sponsored athletes. So that's kind of a closed, where we open that loop to everybody. So that was kind of, it was our fault as well. It was our ignorance to how that whole system works. But that was a big thing we had to overcome, because there's a lot of negative things about us for a long time, about our skis. And, it's been a constant battle trying to help people understand that that's what we were doing. We weren't just building crappy skis. We were doing the learning process.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of gumption too, because you guys have clearly thought out a lot of the process, whether you ended up sticking to that or not, or having to adapt to something else. And it's nice to see that there's actually thought behind that on the other side, compared to what a lot of other people would end up seeing online, where they're assuming that, there was just some crappy skis being put out and there was no thought behind it and nobody really cared. And it's like, it's all part of a bigger plan. And it's like, I think a lot of people don't understand how slowly a lot of things take when you're doing your own projects, especially when you're doing something like what you and Michael are doing, where basically nobody has done it before, and you're kind of in this space where you can't really pull from somebody to learn too much. You can pull like bits and pieces, but it's up to you to kind of get it done. And so you're trying to like deal with all this stuff at the same time, and also explain to people how this is new, and like they don't really understand it. And I think it's funny to like be on the outside and see that whole thing go down, and like see people react to something new, and have like a portion of the people that you're targeting be like, oh yeah, that's sick, this is awesome, this is crazy, and then the other person just doesn't get it in any way, shape, or form.
Right. Yeah, I think you did a very correct synopsis there. Yeah.
So how did you take me through like an entire process? So if someone comes to you with a ski that they want built custom, they can either do it online, or they can go with the in-person route, which is how you kind of ended up molding in your cooking side of things with it.
Actually, can you repeat? I'm not sure what you mean by the cooking aspect in terms of design.
Yeah, so you had a couple people come out and go through an entire process of creating a ski start to finish, and then you ended up molding in your cooking side of things with that experience. And is that something that other people can get into, or how does that work?
Yeah, so basically we offer workshops. So where people come out, it's a one-day workshop, and we take you from A to Z through the process. You do 80% of the work on your own. We're right there with you, guiding you, teaching you. But basically you're doing the work, so you can really say you built your skis, and not so that you have, this, right to say that. It's also just because you'll learn an incredible amount through that time, and you're welcome to ask as many and whatever questions you have. And both Michael and myself are obviously knowledgeable as well, and we love to share that information with people. And then in conjunction with that day, because it starts around 9, usually ends around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, I cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they're just not hot dogs and ramen. It's really good, yummy, good feeling food. And it's just a fun day. It's a great day to kind of just hang out, get to know us. We get to hang out, get to know them, and eat good food, maybe have a beer at the end of the day and build skis together.
And I'm assuming you don't get too many crappy people involved in that process because they're coming out to build custom skis in a mobile home. So you can't be with too many, shitheads when you're kind of like out doing something that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think that once people, whether they have some sort of idea of who we are prior to, if they actually take the initiative to book the workshop, come out, as soon as they meet us, we're just genuine, wholesome, really welcoming people.
How do people typically find out about either the workshops or about community skis in general? Like, have you kind of asked a couple different people when they end up coming to the workshops about how they ended up taking that first step? Because I'm always interested in when somebody finds a new company, how they end up being pushed toward that buying decision or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're constantly trying to find out because we're trying to understand how to reach more people because a lot of people don't know about us. Mm-hmm. So I think through the workshop, most people have found us by doing Google search, like build your own skis, and then we come up. So we're pretty good on that. In terms of actually just ordering custom skis and knowing about us as a manufacturer, that's been a struggle. I mean, SEO is a tough game and we're learning all about it and it takes time to grow it. We had that 3-year period where we weren't focused on our website when we were in Mammoth because we were focused on that face-to-face. So we have to kind of build that back up, and it's just a constant thing we're working on. But I think, like what Backcountry just did, that feature that the Locals Project put out has been huge because it was able to tell our story in a way which I think people were able to comprehend. That's been the hardest thing we've been trying to figure out is how do you tell our story? It's really unusual. You build skis out of a trailer and they're custom and it's not a traditional way of building them. And how do you design skis? And then you do these workshops and then there's a whole educational component. So how do you fit all that into a website and not confuse someone, and not have them lose your attention? So having that video come out has been huge because it's been picked up by a lot of other publications as well. So it's given us a lot of exposure. And we've always found, even with the first trailer, that, media has been our best bet in terms of we had a couple magazine articles come out about 333 skis way back when, and people still refer to them. I mean, it was just a story that they read, that they understood, they connected to, and it stayed on their mind, all this time.
Definitely. So when someone's asking you how the process works and how you take them through or what they're going to end up going through if they end up doing one of the workshops, how do you kind of put that into one little package and explain to them pretty quickly what kind of things they're going to be doing throughout the day?
So when someone contacts us, we have a really cute little form on our website that they can fill out, just basic information about where are they coming from, and because there's a logistical whole side of it that we have to figure out as well, especially now that we're mobile, which isn't a big deal. It's just a matter of just planning accordingly. Finding out, do they have any food allergies? Do they have any food restrictions? That sort of thing. And then once we find out the basics about them and we get the logistics figured out, then we actually work on the ski design prior to their arrival, and specifically the graphic design, because that can be something that it only takes 5 minutes to do. It can be something that takes, a week and a half, 2 weeks to do, depending on the intricacy of the graphics and just the feedback time between myself and the client back and forth. So there's those things that get taken care of. And then basically when they come out, we give them kind of a brief itinerary for the day. We'll start at 9 with coffee and breakfast, get to know each other, have a nice conversation. And then basically we get right on the platform and we get to work. And we'll work until about noon, 1 o'clock. Take a break, usually about that time, depending on the pace of the client, but we're usually about ready for to get on wet lay deck at that point. So all the material prep's been done. The core's been milled, it's been cut, it's been shaped, the P-tex has been cut, the edge has been assembled onto the P-tex. So basically, building a ski is similar to cooking in a lot of ways, where you're building your mise en place, which is all your material prep, and then you go on to, say, the line, and that's when you're going to execute the glassing process of the skis, and then you've got the finish, which is the baking of it. So basically around lunchtime is when we'll stop, have a break, have a nice lunch. And then when we go back into the shop, we're ready to do that glassing process. So we wet out all the materials, goes into the hot box, stays in there about 50 minutes, comes out, and then it's the finish process, which basically there's a lot of extra fiberglass material that's overhanging the actual ski. That gets trim cut off, side grind, we do a base grind, and then a final clear coat for the graphics. And typically in the finish process, that's primarily the part that Michael does that the client doesn't do. They'll do part of it, but there are some critical points there where we couldn't reverse it. So we've set up from start to finish, anyone can come in, whether you have ever used a power tool or not. And no matter if you're, I mean, we've had an 8-year-old boy, we've had a 70-year-old woman. It doesn't matter in terms of your expertise or even your confidence in using power tools. And we've set up everything so that when they go through that process, there's no loss of quality between if they build it or if we built it. It's the same ski. And there's all kinds of quality checkpoints. Now, when we get to the finish process, though, there's a couple things that happen that if they made a mistake, the ski would be shot. So on those occasions, Michael takes over and he just does those few things.
Gotcha. And then are there typical questions that you see that come up throughout that process, regardless of what type of person ends up working on the ski? Because I'm assuming, if not the entire process, most of it people are totally foreign to.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of questions, and we have a lot of engineers that sign up for the workshop too, because they just geek out on it. I mean, that's just an engineer's kind of dream right there. It's almost like going to a Professor Madhouse workshop and just seeing how all these different things move together. And I mean, just the trailer alone is interesting and how all that functions. But then obviously the ski manufacturing platform. So we get a lot of great questions. A lot of people really get engaged with it. I don't think we've ever had someone come through and not ask a ton of questions, because it's just, like I said, we invoke that out of people. We want people to be curious and ask questions and understand and learn.
And then so that brings me to a different question, is within the industry, are you worried about other people coming in and replicating that process, or is it more of you want to see that change happen throughout the industry, and so it's more of like an open source type thing where you want that idea to spread and you want it to kind of progress and see the manufacturing process get a little more clean and efficient?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, it's a tricky, there's kind of a fine line there. Would we want someone to come in, do our workshop, and just kind of, take our ideas and platform and go build their own shop? Well, we're kind of setting ourselves up to it if we want to be deceived like that, but I don't think that the people that come to the workshop are going to do that. And if they do, so be it. It's America. It's competition, We'll hopefully be better than them in the end. But on the other side of it, we're actually giving the platform away. I mean, we build these programs for high schools, and we just put one in at Bend High, and we would like to put more in across the country. We've been contacted by actually quite a few schools. So we want to see people using this platform, especially in an educational platform where young students can learn about not just how to build skis and snowboards, but how to run a manufacturing business. So that then after school, if they choose to go that route, or after college, whatever they want to do, that then they have at least a basic understanding of this kind of alternative way to build something, whether it's a paddleboard or skateboard or anything to be manufactured, clothing, etc. So on one side, we're giving it away. On the other side, we've never, people all the time tell us, oh, you should patent this, you should that. We just never felt we wanted to do that. We don't want to black box anything. It might be to our demise in the end, but we don't think so. We think that we are innovative enough. We're constantly changing things. We're constantly getting better. So through that innovation and growth, we'll stay competitive and hopefully on top of other people that may come into that.
I really appreciate that idea too, because I think there's a lot of people that end up getting into business, or they get into a certain point of their business where they get a little bit scared, and then they end up trying to protect all these things, and they lose sight of what kind of got them there in the first place, and connecting with people and bringing other ideas in and changing and molding. So I think that's really cool. And I also appreciate the fact that you brought up the Bend High thing, because I also think it's cool to talk to people about how they're seeing the work that they're doing continued by somebody else, or how somebody else can end up learning from their mistakes in order to end up furthering that process and just kind of helping everybody as a whole. How did you guys end up getting into the high school thing, and how is that whole process unfolding?
Well, we've always been based in education. When we had the first trailer, we did, little things. We had like Bishop High School, which is a local high school, came and when we were in our workshop, our actual Mammoth shop, we had, the math class from Mammoth come by, different things. We were always trying to reach out in terms of students and education. But we did meet a little bit of resistance there in terms of wanting to put in a high school program, that sort of thing, for a number of reasons. So we kind of just decided not to focus on that idea for a little while. And then before we left Mammoth, we got a contact from Gavin Myers, who's the engineering teacher at Bend Senior High School. And he said, I really want to put this ski building program into my high school as part of my engineering program. What do you guys think? And we said, well, why don't you just come out and spend a workshop with us, or, and spend a week, spend longer than just a day. And so you'll understand the process, and then you can tell us if you think it's feasible or not. So he came out and he did that. And at the end of the week, he was like, this is incredible. We can definitely do this. How do we make it happen? So basically, we put together a really bare bones package where we basically gave away. I mean, they were able to cover us, luckily, our cost for just material, but we donated all our time and labor and all the things we figured out, and we built these amazing workstations, or Michael did, that we just delivered into Bend High actually a few days ago. And now the students are going to be building their own skis and snowboards this winter. So it's a full program. So the engineering teacher is taking them through understanding ski design, snowboard design, et cetera, and all the things that go along with it and different disciplines he needs to put into his curriculum. And then they have the part where they actually build their own ski and snowboard. And once the program's fully up and running, they'll be building 2 sets, I believe, per student per year, which means one of the great things about it is that with a public school setting, obviously funding is always an issue. And while the cost to build a set of skis or snowboards is not that much, it's still a cost. So what they can do is they can take a few of those skis or snowboards that they build every year, and the students can auction them off within the community, and then they'll have that money to then feed into the material cost for the next year. So it's a full system, full loop.
Awesome. So do you see that kind of expanding into other schools, or how would that work if it ends up being a hit, which it sounds like it kind of already is in the Bend High situation?
Yeah, we definitely want to see this in other schools. I think the more people that are able to experience this program, the better off they'll be. And our bigger picture is actually to have this expand more into kind of like a mini MBA, so to speak, where students maybe work in teams, and there's a team that's going to be comprised of people who are doing the design, they're doing the manufacturing, and then there's people that are doing the business and they're doing the marketing side of it. So they understand the full business model. Now, they all need to understand all those aspects. Doesn't mean that the person who's really good at marketing is going to be the one building the skis, but they have to understand that process enough to be able to market it correctly. And across all the people need to be able to. So that's really our next goal, is to try to figure out a curriculum. And a lot of students have been really excited about this. A lot of schools have been really excited about this. So that's what we're working on next, is to not just get the platform in there, but get this bigger program in there. And we've been approached by different schools across the country. Taos, New Mexico. We've got a school hopefully in Golden, Colorado, a Montessori school there. There's a school actually next week from Washington State, actually later this week. Somebody's coming down to talk to us about putting the program up there. Cascades Academy, which is a private school here in Bend, is very interested. And then actually this winter we'll be going to Rocky Mountain School, and we're going to host a 1-week workshop with them, those guys over in Carbondale. And at least just with our trailer, we'll do a workshop with, I think it's about 15 students. And then hopefully, after that, we'll be able to see if it's going to be feasible to put an actual program into their school as well. I mean, with schools, it's 2 things that seem to be the restriction, which is one is funding, which it's a very low cost project. It's not that big of a deal. And then the other thing is just the space that's required for it. It doesn't need a lot of space, but it does need a certain amount of space, and it needs certain OSHA regulations, to make sure it's a safe space for students to be working in.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting too to hear about the whole process and how kids are getting involved. And I think the more people that you get in on that process, the more it's going to kind of evolve, and you're going to not only be able to like test the final product, but then kids are going to start getting involved in ways that you might not have thought of between you and Michael. And like, it's just going to turn into this super crazy dynamic thing, which kind of brings me into another question, which is like in getting into those different things, how do you guys end up honing in on the couple things that you want to focus on? Because I feel like in just talking to you and Michael, your mind just starts racing. It's like you're doing all this really cool stuff and you're putting all these ideas together. How do you end up taking that whole thing and being like, okay, these are the little things that we end up wanting to focus on, and these are the things that we feel like are going to either progress the business or help other people in the best way?
I think the thing we always do is just going back to looking at the bigger picture, and kind of in the past year or two, we've actually started, as oddly enough as it sounds, we started thinking like, what is it we actually want to do? Before we were just like, okay, this is what we think we need to do. This is what we think is important. So we put a lot of energy and effort. And a lot of those things we're just learning about things, learning about website design, learning about SEO, learning about building trust with a client through the internet, and there's probably 50 other things we need to learn about, and learning about, ski design, learning about building skis, learning about composites, learning about different materials to put in those composites, learning about graphic design, best way to apply graphics, all those sort of things. So I think we got to a point where we're never an expert on any of those, but we've gotten to a point where we can say, okay, what is it out of all the things we do that we really want to do? Well, we really want to do something with education, because both Michael and I feel very very, like, that's super meaningful in our lives, and it's really important. We think, you know, the more educated anybody is, the better off everyone's going to be. So let's put our effort into that. Being in a mobile platform like we are for building skis, it allows us a lot of versatility in terms of how often do we do skis, workshops, which we absolutely love to do. And then, you know, what's the bigger picture? What are we trying to achieve 2, 10, 15 years from now? So what do we need to focus on to get to there? So the program, the high school program, something we really want to focus on. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, we really want to do this 40-foot trailer, which is a restaurant and a fabrication. And what's cool about it is that it'll be really versatile in the sense that it's going to be basically a 40-foot flatbed trailer. First 10 feet is going to be commercial kitchen space. There'll be over the tongue, there's a deck that we'll have, we'll build out like a small little space for living. And then the other 30 feet is going to be basically, Michael's designing this really rad kind of panel system where panels come up, move down, move around. So you can create that space for whatever you want to do, whether it's let's put the panels up and let's build some skis and do a workshop, build skis production. Let's set it up so Michael can do fabrication, whether he's fabricating another high school program, you know, different tables, maybe on site, or he's just, I mean, that's just what he does. He loves to fab. So if he's making whatever, he'll have a full fabrication. And then in terms of the restaurant, it can be set up for just this most amazing, wonderful experience in terms of dining, where it'd be very comfortable, warm, just architecturally interesting. And you can be in the most amazing places, which is basically could be fully immersed in nature, where there is no electricity, there is no water, but we'd have all that capability on board. And things will fold out, move, kind of origami-ish, so it will create different layers of complexity, different spaces based upon the weather, the temperature, and how many people are on board, etc. I know that's really abstract.
So can you explain how did that side of like the cooking side of things for you, how did that come about from the community ski side, and how is that going to be linked moving forward, and how do you see or what is your overarching view for the cooking side of that specific trailer?
Well, I just realized over time, you know, the more I grew in my own person and the more I got to know myself, I realized cooking is something I really want to do. It's a creative outlet for me, and I just love it. When we had our shop in Mammoth, we did a lot of events, like I mentioned, and I would always cook food for it. It was always free events. And I would cook amazing, or as a full meal, or as just little hors d'oeuvres for people to eat. And I got, you know, kind of my hands back into that bigger production of cooking food. And then when we were in Mammoth, oddly enough, a good friend of ours opened a restaurant right next to our shop. So and Michael was very much involved in helping him kind of fabricate and build out that space. So, and then when he opened, I worked with him for the first, I think it was 6 months or so on the line. So that kind of got me back into that commercial kitchen on the line mode. And just through all those experiences and some soul searching, I realized that cooking is really what I want to do. And so but I don't want to just have a restaurant in a traditional sense. I really love this mobile lifestyle. I love the idea of having an environment in, say, the middle of the redwood forest where you could then have this amazing 7-course meal. Or maybe it's more of like an events platform where people can come and there's, you know, a mini art showing in this, like a mini art gallery, and people can come for hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and it's like this art showing within like this, you know, not downtown, it's like out in the forest. Mm-hmm. I just love the ideas that all the different things that could possibly happen from that. So that's pretty much why I want to get back into cooking in that aspect, and not say I'm done with community skis by any means. It's just, you know, taking a step back. Obviously, I don't have so much time in the day, but, you know, I would still love to continue doing graphic design with the skis, and you know, we'll see when this restaurant actually gets up and going. For the interim, I'll definitely still be full time at community skis and focused on that.
It's always interesting to me too to see how you guys end up pulling that community aspect of what you're doing into other things, as you just mentioned with the cooking side of stuff. And I think that's definitely one thing that's missing in relation to our kind of culture around food in the United States, is like we don't have that connection with where it came from and the experiences that you're having with the people while you're eating. And so it's really awesome to see that is kind of being brought back into the whole experience of eating and connecting with people. Because I think when we were out in the desert, it was one thing that I had really resonated with and kind of connected with when we had eaten a couple meals together out there was like, wow, I haven't had this awesome of a meal in a really long time. And it was because it was in this amazing place with some really cool people, and it just made it an entirely different experience.
Awesome. I'm glad you picked up on that. That's rad.
Nice. So how do you see things going with both community skis and the cooking side of things moving forward? Like, are you guys going to try and get somebody else in to end up helping Michael if you end up making the transition, or are you going to try and keep merging different things together? Like, what are some other big projects that you see both for the cooking side of it and the ski side?
I think moving forward, it's just going to be based upon, how many ski sales do we start to pick up from this extra exposure? How much better can we get? In regards to the high school program, we want to keep pushing that forward. So Michael's, that's his deal in terms of fabricating the tables and the platforms. I'll deal with the coordination, the business aspect of that. So that's no problem. In terms of the cooking, it's going to take some time to build that restaurant out and really understand what it's going to be. So in the interim, I spend, pretty much, almost every day, I spend time definitely reading about cooking, just understanding, trying to get better on my own, doing a lot of cooking on my own, whether it's for friends in the area or just for Michael and myself. So just constantly making sure that I'm bettering myself at that right now. And then in regards to ski production, yeah, we'd love to, if we get big enough, absolutely hire on a crew and have that crew be the one that actually does all the manufacturing. Michael and I don't absolutely need to be the ones that build those skis. It's very transferable, obviously, the process and whatnot.
Awesome. And then if you had a couple things that you could say to some other people that were either potentially trying to follow in your footsteps with what you guys are doing, or just end up going for something that they haven't really tried before and they're like taking that first step, is there anything from your experiences and your learning that you would be able to tell somebody like, hey, this is going to help out if you end up doing this more, or anything along that line?
Yeah, I see anyone that's doing something very unusual that's against the grain, you're going to want to have a pretty good support system around you because you'll get a lot of adversity. So what's been really important to me are the few people that have had my back the whole time. Obviously my family, but also certain friends that no matter different turbulences, different things that went through, or, just being uncertain of what was going to happen in the future, those people have always stood by my side. And if anything, just a sounding board for me to kind of throw my ideas out, but also just to offer that encouragement and support. That's been huge. To help balance out the adversity. And then just keep trying, it's gonna be tough, but I think it's all about your perspective. You can look at a problem as this awful thing, or you can look at it as this opportunity. So just trying to, even in the worst of times, just keep it positive and learn what you can from it and work through it.
And then last question, I think a lot of people would probably ask this just based on the million different things that you talked about and just in this one episode. How do you end up getting all this done in a single day? Like, how do you pack everything in? Do you have any sort of system to, like pivot between learning and reading and then doing, and like, how do you manage your whole thought process and kind of like daily routine, I guess?
Well, one huge thing, which was a problem when we had the shop, is there's really no interruptions anymore because there's nobody coming up into the shop at any point, any given time. So that alone can create, a block of time where I'm focused, where I'm not constantly changing my thoughts, which is completely inefficient. Just trying to have a clear mind of what it is I'm going to do that day. I usually get up in the morning, and first thing I do is I get Evernote out and I make my list of the things I want to accomplish that day, and try to set guidelines in terms of time restraints, and then just go at it. And obviously things change, things come up, certain emails might come in or a phone call or whatever might come up, so it'll change that day, but being flexible with it, not being worried if I didn't get to everything that day. And then just making sure that I incorporate in that day some sort of study time, whether it's early in the morning, or for me, I'm more of a night person. So usually late at night, I'll be up, I've got a great little reading light and I'll be up studying. And, I definitely need to incorporate some sort of exercise into my day to day. I'm definitely a person that can't just be sedentary. I have to move. So, make sure I have that 30-minute or an hour run every day and just get out. But Evernote's been huge for me. Not that I'm promoting Evernote or anything, but it's just been amazing. The way I'm able to even organize my recipes, organize everything. My whole life's in that thing.
Yeah, that's an incredibly great tool. I haven't gotten too much involved with it, but I've watched other people that have been, pretty in depth with how they're structuring their day and stuff on it. And it's one of those things where once you get involved with it, you really can't do anything without it.
Right. And it syncs to everything. So I could be, you know, at the grocery store and be like, well, what am I going to cook? You know, and then I just pull that thing out and I'm okay, got it. Great.
Awesome. And then how can people find your stuff, whether it be, I don't know if you have a website for the cooking side of things yet, but the ski side of stuff.
So the ski side, go to communityskis.com, and that's where we have everything from our ski manufacturing to, talks about our trailer, talks about our educational program, and then talks about the workshops. And then in terms of the cooking, that is to be coming soon, and that link will definitely be put up through communityskis.com.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'd love to have you on again in the future, just because you guys have so many things going on. It's going to be interesting to see how everything kind of shifts and changes and, you know, evolves. So.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I really appreciate you inviting me on. This was great.
Yeah, anytime. I'll be sure to put up a link to that short video that the Locals Project did on the blog on the site too, and hopefully, you know, blow that up a little bit.
Give some kudos out. Those guys are amazing. I'm so impressed with them.
Yeah, they totally are. It would be really awesome to get out and do some sort of project together in the future. I don't know what that would be, but
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, keep in touch. We'll make that happen.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right. Bye, Nick.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.